Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are very excited for today's edition of the 49er Industry Chat, Hidden in Plain Sight, Careers in Learning and Development. So we're just going to wait a couple of moments for folks to continue to filter in, give them a chance to join us, and then we'll get started. In the meantime, enjoy the title slide and get ready for today's chat. I know I'm excited. Kim, are you excited for the chat today?
I am excited to be here. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. So let's get started then. So my name is Jenna Quinn, and it is my pleasure as the Assistant Director of Alumni and Affinity Engagement to welcome you all to this 49er Industry Chat. We just need to inform everyone that this session is being recorded. So really what that means to you is that this will be available for you on demand at our website at www.csulb.edu/alumni. Feel free to send to a friend or to a colleague or anyone who you think might get something out of it. And sorry about that. So since this is a webinar format, we will be encouraging you all who are here to submit any questions that you have for our moderator in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And you don't need to wait for the end. You can just go ahead and submit at any time. And with that, I'd like to give a big welcome to Kim. Kim,
Hi.
hi, Kim. Yeah. So just your bio really quick. Kim is the training director for Cross Country Workforce Solutions Group, a nationwide healthcare staffing organization. She has spent her 16-year career in the field of learning and development, creating systems and processes that help companies retain and grow good talent. She works with subject matter experts to develop strategies for creating and sharing knowledge where it is needed most, including new hire orientations, systems trainings, and software skills. From 2013 to 2019, Kim orchestrated an annual business owner symposium that helped local small business owners plan for their futures and stay educated about changing regulations. She has a master's in education with an emphasis on learning design and technology from Purdue University and loves to knit in her spare time. Thanks so much for joining us, Kim.
Thank
So,
you for having me.
yeah, so just, starting off with the questions, let's just, let's start off with a little bit of background. What can you tell me about your life and your experiences before CSULB that led you here?
Sure. I was born and raised in Southern California. I am originally from Placentia, which is near Fullerton. For those of you who aren't familiar, people tend to overlook Placentia as a very tiny city. But yeah, that's where I grew up. Have always been interested in words. Before I even enrolled in CSULB, I knew I wanted to be an English major from about seventh grade on. Like, I knew that's what I wanted. I wanted to be an English major. I love words. I love reading. I love communicating. And so that was really the trajectory that I was on from the beginning. Um, Went to school at a high school called El Dorado High School, and then I actually chose Cal State Long Beach because it was close enough to commute, but different enough that it wasn't going to be high school part two. A lot of people from my high school went to Cal State Fullerton, and I wanted something new and different. So I decided on Cal State Long Beach.
Awesome, yeah. And what was your student experience like? What types of, clubs or activities or any classes in particular that were formative for you or professors?
Yeah, actually, there were a few. So, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I did as a commuting student was to try to make connections and friendships on campus because it's so easy to fall into that routine of drive to school, take class, hit the road, never talk to anyone outside of school. And I didn't really want that. I am an extrovert's extrovert, and I need people communication and people contact. So I ended up joining a sorority, Alpha Omicron Pi, at Cal State Long Beach, and found a lot of connections there. And it felt more Like I had that stable base while going to college, that's what I was looking for from the beginning. So I really appreciated that. And then I actually met my first sorority sister and got recruited because we had a philosophy class together. And I minored in philosophy. I was an English creative writing major, minored in philosophy because I wanted to break up some of those upper division English classes that were, read 15 books, write some papers. So I needed something to pepper in between to break it up. Chose philosophy, and that sort of led me down the path of weirdly joining a sorority. So but my philosophy classes, I think, were the most challenging, believe it or not. There were a lot of topics I had never considered and people I don't think I would have run across if I hadn't been part of that department. So I actually really appreciate that small slice of my college career that wasn't something that I had planned for.
Yeah, no, I think that's always great to find something that you maybe weren't expecting, but ended up being pretty like influential or formative. So yeah, I think that's really awesome. And so what was it like leaving CSULB? What was the next step that you took, or what was that first job that you landed? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, so that was an interesting time. My goal number one with an English degree was actually to be in the editing space. I really wanted to be an editor at a magazine publishing company. Really specific, but I had run into that doing my high school senior project, as a lot of high schools do, where you have to go investigate some sort of career that you think you might want and do some shadowing. And I had discovered editing at a magazine publisher locally and was very interested in that. And I like the nitty gritty of editing. And so that was really my number one goal throughout my time at CSULB. As we started getting closer to graduation, I started sending out resumes to a lot of companies in New York. New York, at the time, I'm sure still today, is really a mecca for um, the publishing industry. And so, if you want to get your foot in the door, that was really where I thought I had to go. So I sent out a bunch of resumes, did not get any callbacks for a really long time. This was 2007. So we're right at the beginning of the
The Great
recession.
Recession, right?
So I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna go on like vacation to New York for 2 weeks. I'll send some resumes out and let them know I'm gonna be here from this date to this date, accepting interviews. I know that my address is in California, but I will be moving to New York. And got one call back the day after our graduation ceremony. And they told me that there was an editorial assistant position available. And when we got right down to salary, they were saying it was going to be somewhere between $28,000 and $29,000 a year, which even in 2007, I was like, I'm not sure how many jobs I'm going to need, but I feel like it's more than one if you're going to pay me 28,000 to live in New York. So I had to turn it down, and that was disappointing, but I was not uh, turned off from my goal. I thought, okay, here's my backup plan. I'm gonna get whatever job I can in the meantime, save up a bunch of money, bankroll myself to just move to New York without having a job, and just stay there until the money runs out. And that's where I accidentally discovered what would become my career, because that in the meantime job was as a training coordinator for a mortgage bank. And so that's really the sort of the beginning of what led me down. But that was that transition period, was like, I'm trying to be an editor, I'm trying to get to New York, it's not happening right now. What can I do in the meantime? And so that was really that beginning, that left turn into the training and development industry.
Yeah, I usually like to ask folks like, how did you find your way there? Was it intentional or did you kind of fall into it? But, when you fall into it, right, there's always that question of like, well, is this what you went to school for? How does that align with it? So I would really love, if you could speak about some of those transferable skills from, your degree at the beach to where you found yourself.
Absolutely. So When I got the job as a training coordinator, right out of college, it was through a temp agency. So I'm not getting any benefits. I don't really have paid time off. Again, this was my like, I figured a whatever. It's just my whatever job. It's just earning me money. I'm not invested in it. So in the beginning, it was putting together 3-ring binders of training material, right? Not exciting. Making copies at a copy machine, not super exciting. At some point, my boss discovers that I like writing and I'm interested in editing and asks if I want to help put together some of the next learning modules. So they're training new mortgage lenders on how to do their job. And in order to do that, there's some training material to put together, screenshots of systems that they're going to be using, an order of operations of what our processes are. Do you want to help put one of those together and you want to edit it? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll give that a try. And after a couple months of that, I realized I was using the skills that I had intended to use in the publishing industry, but in a way that no one ever told me about. It's not one of those things that you find at a high school career day is, oh, you can be an editor for like an internal training and development department. So I was using my writing skills, my editing skills, a little bit of visual graphic design to make sure that things look correct on the page, that they're visually easy to understand, easy to process so that it doesn't feel like an overwhelming amount of information. So that was when I started looking at it as more than a whatever, I'm just here for the money job. And I was thinking, well, maybe I could actually do this. I mean, I do want to be a writer and an editor. What if it's just in a different field that I wasn't expecting? So I decided to stay for a little bit longer to figure out, where am I going to go with this? Do I really want this? The next chapter in that story is at the time there were several mortgage banks that actually went under. Mine was one of them. So I was, as a little bit of a tangent, I was assigned to be an accidental bank teller for about 6 months when the fall of that mortgage company happened. It actually went out of business, was taken over by the FDIC, which is unusual. So I was actually there when 2 gentlemen with rolling laptop cases said, please close and lock your doors. You're no longer open for business. And I decided it was time to find a new job. Uh, so it was definitely not a boring time in my life, but I did decide to stick with the training. When I went to look for that new job, I said, well, do other people have training coordinators? Is this a job you can get in other places? And it was. And so I got a training coordinator position at a company called Lakeshore Learning Materials, which creates toys, learning tools for both teachers and parents. They have a lot of retail stores across the country and an online presence. And they had a training coordinator opening. So I decided to take the skills that I had built up to that point, and now I'm moving to a different industry. Now I'm in retail, and again kept building up those skills. And that's when I decided I was going to double down on this, because I continued to like everything that I was doing. And so I decided to go back to school at that point. So I'd probably been, what, 6 years out of my undergrad degree, and I decided to go back to school. So I was what you would consider like a non-traditional student, since I didn't go straight from my bachelor's to my master's.
Yeah, for sure. And, so what was that point when you realized, it finally clicked to you, like, I should go back to school and I should get that master's in learning design and technology. When was that aha moment for you?
Yeah, so a lot of what I was doing at Lakeshore was writing customer service and sales material for the people who work in the retail store. So we get a new product and we would want to tell the retail associates, well, what is the product? What does it do? How do we sell this to people? If someone's asking for something, what sort of questions would they ask that might lead you to this product, right? So that was our goal, but also it should be something that somebody could read in less than 10 minutes. It can't be a book. These people are busy. They're supposed to be on the floor. So I really enjoyed the constraints of, here's all the information you need to provide, and here's the limited area in which you can provide them in the time that you have. And it became like a puzzle. And most of it I was learning by doing. And while that is a great way to learn things, I knew that if I wanted to be better at it, I should probably go get some training myself. Like, how can I be better at this? What else is there to know other than just trying and seeing what works? And so I started looking around to seeing if there were programs that were offered. I wasn't even sure that that was a thing, right? That was a program that was offered. I was just trying to figure out, well, how do I educate myself more about this? How do I get really good at it instead of just being thrown in and hoping that I'm doing it right? And so I decided if I'm going to do this, I want to be good at it. And that was what led me to look into graduate programs.
For sure. Um, for a lot of folks, like you said, there's certain jobs that are you go to a career fair and it's you, people like know what it is to be a firefighter or an editor or what have you. But when you have these jobs that maybe aren't top of mind or things that people know or have familiarity with, there's wondering what does a typical day look like in your position?
Well, the good news is there aren't a lot of typical days. So these are great roles for people who like to do a lot of different things. So for example, just this last week, I've done voiceover recording. I've done online course development using course authoring software. And that's why I was doing the voiceover so that I could insert the voiceover then into that online courseware. I also am responsible for the learning management system, or LMS. If anyone's heard it referred to that way, I'm the administrator for that. So when people forget their passwords, I'm the person that gets the email that helps them to reset their password or to fix any glitches that are going on. And then I'm also trying to create new strategies for new hire employees to get started within the company, and what does that trajectory look like for their first 90 days. So I'm anywhere from up here to strategic level to down here at making sure the button on the screen when you're in an online course is correct and goes to the right section of the course, right? And so there's really a little bit of everything in between, and that depends on how the company is set up. I happen to be at a company, and I work for a division of that company that it's really just me at this point. We might grow later, but it's just me. There are other companies where you might have a team of people, and some of those responsibilities that I'm currently doing would actually be broken up into different departments. So if you're more interested in the graphic design, visual layout of it, that might actually be pulled out as a separate element from the people who are doing the curriculum design to make sure that the content itself is correct and being updated regularly. So it depends on the company that you work for as well.
Gotcha. Well, with that, what do you find to be the most challenging part of your job, and what is the most rewarding?
I think those might be the same answer. Maybe let me think about that a little bit. The something that is both challenging and rewarding is being able to tailor your content and what you're trying to develop to the audience specifically. So when I was working at that mortgage lending company, that's one audience. There's people who are tech savvy. They're trying to be mortgage brokers, or along the chain of anything to do with mortgage banking in general. That's going to be one set of people. Where I work now, the audience for my courses is oftentimes over the age of 60 years old. They may not have reliable internet at home for this particular group of people that I'm designing content for. So that's going to change how I approach the development of those courses. What does the user interface look like? How hard is it for them to start a course? How hard is it for them to answer questions? So those are all things I have to keep in mind when I'm designing it. So it is challenging, but it's so satisfying when we get it right. And I don't want to hear back from people, gosh, this is really hard. I don't know if I want to work here because this is really hard. And so like, oh no, like, let's find a way to make this easier. The goal is not to make it so hard that you can't complete the thing we're asking you to do, right? So coming up with a way to successfully navigate those issues is both challenging and rewarding. I would say something that's maybe more on the challenging side is being in the middle of requests. So, for example, you've got upper management folks within a company who think, okay, people who work here need A, B, and C to be successful. And then you're hearing requests from the other side where, hey, I've got employees who don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. Can you design training for that? And they don't necessarily match. And so you're the facilitator for that conversation of, I see the goal that you're trying to get to, upper management, but I'm hearing feedback from employees who are actually doing these day-to-day jobs, and here's the resources they need. Like, how do we meet in the middle? How do we agree on a priority? Those are sometimes very difficult conversations to have. If one person or the other is convinced that no, we just need this one, if you just make them take this one online course, everything will be solved. Spoiler alert, it usually is not.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And how do you think the best way to manage that, right? When you're managing not just down, but also up, what
Mhm.
kind of strategies do you utilize?
You have to be able to speak whichever language works best for both that role and that person individually. So you have to be fluent, so to speak, in a lot of different elements. So, for example, if I'm trying to explain why, let's say we're getting a new learning management system, and I'm trying to explain why that's a good thing to upper management, they're probably going to want to hear a lot of the numbers. How much does it cost? How many people can we include? Is this going to be any faster for us? Will we be able to get people up and running sooner? Will they be better trained? Fewer customer complaints, whatever that looks like, right? They want numbers, they want a spreadsheet, basically. From the other side of it, the person who's using it on a daily basis kind of doesn't care how much it costs and how fast it is. Like, can I use it? Is it easy to use? Is it do I have to go through a bunch of hoops to get there? How many accounts do I have to create in order to get myself there? I mean, everyone's felt the frustration of trying to go to a website where, like, oh, well, but first you have to do this, and then you go there, and oh, but first you have to do this other thing, right? How complicated is it to get the person where they need to be? Because if they don't use it, all the numbers on that spreadsheet aren't going to be worth a whole lot if no one's using it. So you have to be able to speak to, and here's why you, the daily user, are going to find this useful. It's, things that are assigned to you are immediately on the front page. You don't have to go searching for it, or the courses are only 5 minutes long, or, whatever that looks like. So it's being able to pick out the features and benefits of a thing and speak to whichever audience is going to find those features and benefits most appealing. And um, are they going to meet the objectives, like, that you've determined? If the goal is to get somebody through a course, is that actually going to happen, or is this just a shiny new toy that we all want to play with? So there's a lot of conversations happening. So you have to have an ear to all of the different areas that have a stake in that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that in itself must be incredibly challenging, trying to work with all those different constituencies. And with that, how much room, or how do you manage work-life balance in a role where there's, definitely a lot of folks that you're answering to, and probably fires coming up at all different times? Like, how do you, and folks in your role, is work-life balance an issue, or how do you manage it?
So I haven't personally found work-life balance to be an issue for me, but I think there are definitely some key moments where those are decisions I'm making. It's a combination. So first of all, there's really no such thing as a training emergency.
Mhm.
Um, so if someone needs training, it's either because something went wrong in the past that needs to be addressed. There's never going to be a situation where, oh my God, it's 2 in the morning and we need training now. Like, yep, it's probably something that's proactive, right? It was something you should have done before whatever is happening now. I'm never the on-call middle of the night person because that's just not where training lives. If you're doing it right, it is a very proactive industry. But I know that there are times when you encounter companies that have a culture like that, where you're expected to stay however long or put in how many ever hours. So I think in those situations, that's where it's important to understand that going into the role, right? Are there questions you can ask in the interview that kind of suss out whether or not the culture is like that? And then making sure that you're vocal about wanting that sort of structure for yourself, right? That you're not like, it sets a precedent when you first start if you're constantly the person who's staying late when you don't need to, because this is a salaried, um, most of the time it's a salaried, exempt from overtime position. So it's not unusual to see people staying, slightly outside of hours if you need to, but if that becomes a habit, then people expect it of you. So if you don't set that expectation up front, it's usually fine.
So how important or what kind of role does mentorship play in your field?
I think it is a huge it has the potential to be a huge role. The trouble that I have found personally is it's hard to find more of us.
Ah, yeah, my
So
next question was going to be about networking. So,
yeah.
yeah,
So
tell me
okay,
about it.
so a lot of times if you've had interactions with people, let's say in an HR capacity, there are several HR organizations that you could join that have monthly meetings, they have annual seminars. They've got a lot of places where you can get continuing education on what's going on and also networking opportunities. Um, I have found this really hard to come by in the learning and development space. So there are organizations out there. The biggest one I can think of is ATD, the Association for Talent Development. They also used to be called ASTD, in case anyone has run into them in that capacity. And they do have resources online and books that you can buy that are by a lot of contemporary people who are doing great work in those fields. But it's really hit or miss as to whether there is a local chapter physically near you and how active that chapter is at having meetings and providing content. So I've been finding it difficult to figure out like where do I go, who's out there. There is a great conference that I enjoy going to called DevLearn. It's in Vegas every year actually, which is not a bad thing if you're into that sort of experience. But I try to go every other year. It's available every year, but every other year I try to go because that's where you can see the potential of what's coming a lot of times. So, for example, using augmented reality or virtual reality in a training space, they often will have examples you can try it on. So I was able to actually put on a VR headset and experience a training course that a lab had developed so that you understood how to use it had to do with processing blood samples for cancer patients, because the blood work for cancer patients is used to create their specific cocktail of treatment. It's very important not to screw that up. And so, in order to make sure that someone who's new at their job doesn't damage valuable blood work, this company had designed a program through virtual reality where you can actually take your hands, use in virtual space, take a test tube, put it in a machine, figure out how the machine works, run the tests, all without risk of harm to yourself or to the blood work or to the lab equipment. And so you can see these examples of what people are doing with technology in a training space. And then I come back with all kinds of ideas of what I want to use, and is that even reasonable where we're at with our folks? Do we have the technology for that? I just usually get really hyped up. But then you can also go to seminars for really specific things. There was a course I went to a couple of years ago where they asked how many people in the room are the one and only, right? You don't have a team, it's just you. And it was over 50% of the room.
Wow.
was the only training and development person at their organization. And so they were expecting to, hey, can you be a video editor? Can you be a graphic designer and make like a marketing flyer for our new course? Can you be the voiceover artist? Can you figure out how to publish a text? Or, so there's all these different areas that they're now expecting you to be like a one person show. And that's what that course was about. Some of the, like, how to be a project manager, how to be a video editor, all of these different skills that now fall under training and development. And we were all there to just try to absorb as much information as possible to take back with us so we can be a better one person show.
Yeah, that must be incredibly rough. Is it lonely being a one person shop?
Um, it can be. It depends on the project I'm working on. I often have to work with a lot of people. They're just not in
Oh,
my department. So, a lot of times you're working with what we call subject matter experts. So, let's say I work at Jiffy Lube, I don't know how to change the oil in a car, but I do know how to write training material. So, I'm going to go talk to the person who does know how to change the oil. And then I will become like a human filter for how that information gets processed and published, because a lot of times the people who know the most about a certain subject may not be the best person to explain it to others. Like, you could have 25 years of experience doing it, but maybe you're not great at explaining it to others. And that's where I come in. I take just info dump on me, and then I will take and repackage that so that someone who has no context, they've never done this, they don't have 25 years of experience, can understand it.
perfect. So we have a question. Do you see more companies moving away from internal training and development because of external companies that develop content?
So I did see that for a while. There's sort of two camps, and you'll see that at the vendors that go to these conferences. So there's one camp that is all the tools that you need to create courses. So you've got the online course authoring software. The two big ones are Adobe Captivate and Articulate Storyline, are like the two big course development pieces of software. And so you've got people that are going to help you do that. And then you've got people who are advertising, hey, we've got a huge catalog and buckets of courses, and you can just pay us to host that for you and assign the courses. And we've got the library, we've done it all for you. I think both of those are going to continue to exist because no one's ever going to have an off the shelf product that meets exactly what you want. So there's some things that you can probably standardize. If in the state of California, companies have to provide training to prevent sexual harassment in the workplace. There's a ton of people who do that. Don't waste your energy trying to do that. There are a bunch of those out there because that's a standardized product. Everybody needs it. However, if you work for a company that needs a course on how to operate this specific machine because of your industry, or maybe it's proprietary information that you actually don't want another company to have, you're going to have
Mhm.
to develop that in-house, because only that's going to get you exactly what you want. So I don't know that there's really going to be a sway in one direction or another. It really depends on what that company does, and how specific that training needs to be. But libraries are good for things that everyone needs: sexual harassment training, customer service training. You can even get as granular as like customer service for call center training, right? Like, it's so common that there are people who are developing that kind of coursework. But if the call center that you work for is in a very specific industry that has some, for example, if you work for a call center in the medical field, you may want to call people patients. You may not want to call people patients. Like, there might be like specific word choices that someone in your company has decided, and that off the shelf program may not adhere to the rules that your company has set about what we call people and what we call our process and how we operate. So that's when you would need the customization.
Gotcha. So I know you talked a little bit about the VR, which sounded very cool. My jaw was already on the floor, being like, "Oh, the possibilities." Um, but what role does AI and new technologies play in your field, and are they good or are they bad? What are your opinions about them?
Yeah, I think, like just about everything, it's a tool. It can be used and in a really terrible way, both from a consequence perspective and just like bad quality. But it could also be used in the other direction. So I would see that as just like a tool in the toolbox. I know internal to my company, we've been having a lot of discussions about how we want to use it, how we don't want to use it. At this point, for specifically my company, we're using it to enhance, not to outright create. So if you're having trouble coming up with a way to say it, or you just want some ideas on how something could be written differently, you can run it through an AI and try to get some other verbiage. But at this point, I don't see us being heavily reliant on it. I think where I would have concerns is there are a lot of visual mediums that go into training and development. So like we were talking about with augmented reality and virtual reality, someone's in there programming, especially for virtual reality, is the visuals that go along with that. Is it possible that people are going to try to just like run stuff through AI and, hey, can you just spit out something so that I can pop it in a VR course? I don't know. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know how probable it is that you'll be able to do that given how specific the needs are of each individual like VR environment. So at this point, it seems to be more for words. People are using them for copy text to try to generate ideas. But I think as we all get more tech savvy and more media savvy, it's still going to be a little on the easier side for us to pinpoint. I mean, you can read stuff online when you feel like an article sounds a little off, and you're like, I think somebody just like ran this through an AI. So I think people are going to continue to be smarter than we give them credit for sometimes on being able to recognize AI generated content. But it's a tool, right? Like you can use that to enhance or to give you ideas or as a creative brainstorming platform. I don't think any one tool should be relied upon to just do it for you.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure. So, what was maybe one or two of your favorite projects you ever worked on, or maybe your most impactful projects you worked on?
Well, that's a good question. One of my favorite experiences was actually working at a previous company that did business consulting for a lot of local, mostly blue collar businesses. So anything from somebody who owns a dog grooming service to a potato farmer to a metal fabricator, right? Like there's just a wide variety of a lot of small business, a lot of blue collar small business. And the thought process behind our approach to training was safety. It was really more about like safety and liability. So the more we can train the small businesses, the more educated they will be about potential risks, both from a legal liability standpoint and a literal physical harm and safety standpoint. And so it was exciting to see light bulbs go on when you would present material. So for example, one of the courses that I developed was about coaching employees and how to coach properly, how to make sure that your message is being communicated and that it's not just like you only ever talk to employees when they're doing something wrong. So they think that, oh gosh, here they come again to yell at me or something, right? So we were doing like role play specific, like let's actually practice having the conversation so it doesn't feel weird when you go to do it in real life. And we set the group free. There was about 40 people in the room, and I see one gentleman who's kind of looking around and he's not sure about this. So I go over to talk to him, and he's like, I'm trying to figure out how I would describe him. He was like super friendly, but like rockabilly looking, like metal fabricator guy. He's been the owner of the business for quite a while. And he's like, are we playing pretend now? Like, is that what's happening? And I was like, oh, let me walk you through it. So we talked a little bit about why we were doing it. And he was like, yeah, I guess I'm not allowed to like call people, insert inappropriate name, anymore. People have feelings or whatever. And I was it made me laugh, but like we were able to have a conversation about why we were having the role play and like how it would be important. And he actually did end up seeing like the point, right? Like he actually was, oh, that, you have a point. I do have to change how I talk to my employees. We've got a whole new generation of employees, becoming in the industry, so I'm going to have to learn how to talk to them. So that was I really enjoyed those little moments where like you can see the light bulb come on even in like a really unusual circumstance. And then I'm most looking forward to seeing the impact at my current role because it's healthcare related specifically for seniors. So if we can get even more of these projects off the ground, that actually leads us to providing more care, better care for seniors in the community, in the local community. So like we're just starting to gain momentum on some of our progress. Those courses I'm doing voiceover for. So we're almost done with those and we're getting ready to launch, which I'm really excited about.
I know that sounds incredibly exciting. And it also brings up like an interesting thing. So this training that you're doing right now is geared towards more towards older folks, right? But do you find it difficult trying to navigate or I'm not sure how much you've had experience with this, but trying to navigate training for different age groups, right? Gen Z's coming into the workforce all the way up
Mhm,
through, you still have boomers in the workforce. And
mhm.
how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so we've got that at a lot of different levels, both internally and externally, that we're dealing with. So we've got people who are in their, let's say, their 20s, who are helping to provide tech support for people who might be in their 50s and 60s
Mm.
using the courses. So, getting people to an understanding of where they're at is really important, and not like assuming, oh, you just click on this, right? Like, okay, I think we might need to back up, like make sure they understand the this that you're referring to before we go there. One of the most surprising things when I first started was finding out that a large part of the population that we're dealing with is not used to using a computer at all. Like I've spent significant amounts of time teaching people how to use a mouse, which I was not expecting. And what's interesting is we're actually coming up on sort of a sandwich of that. So you have people who are a little bit younger than me to a little bit older than me who understand how to use a mouse and a computer in general. People who are much older than that maybe didn't really have to do that, and so just got away with, not like there was always another way to do it or someone would help them, right? And so they just didn't become familiar. And now the even younger generations who are still like in middle school and high school, they're like a lot of times things are touch based. Kiosks out in the world are touch based. They're using tablets or phones instead of having like a home computer or something, or like iPads in schools or whatever that looks like. So there is also a large portion of younger people who are more used to using touchpad interfaces. And so making sure that you're designing for that. Otherwise, that's also going to be a really frustrating experience for them.
Oh, yeah, no, I hadn't even thought of that, but you're right. That's just like a real sandwich moment. That's kind of happening right now. Well, believe it or not, we're getting close to that 45 minutes. So it just flew right by. But I want to ask you a question that I love to ask as like a closing question, which is, if you were able to go back to yourself when you were a CSULB grad and give yourself any point of advice when you were just finishing up CSULB, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, um,
Yeah, it could be a big question for sure.
yeah. Because on one hand, I don't regret the trajectory that I ended up on, but I think it's possible that if I had been more open to other opportunities earlier, I would have seen even more out there for me. Like, I think maybe I got a little hung up on my one track mind. Everyone likes a story where someone's like, oh, I've always wanted to do this and then I did it and I only, I worked really hard and I did only that one thing, which is wonderful. But if that's not the end of your story, like it's okay to let go of the thing that you thought you wanted in pursuit of something else. So I think maybe I would encourage myself to um, not be so one track minded. earlier, like start seeing those opportunities even sooner so that you can let yourself be available to say yes to those things.
Awesome. Yeah, no, great point of advice. And yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Kim. It has been so great getting to know your story. And yeah, so for folks that are at home and are watching this, we want to encourage you to reach out to us if you have any other questions. You can follow us online at www.csulb.edu/alumni. Or you can go ahead and follow us on social media. We're on any of those channels. Feel free to stop by, see what we're up to, catch this again, watch it again and again, and other chats that we have available on our video library. But Kim, if folks wanted to continue this conversation with you, or maybe they had some other questions, how might they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm actually really happy to have anyone reach out with questions or concerns, anything you want to know about this industry or jobs in general. I'm on LinkedIn. You can look me up as Kim Leal, and I'm always happy to respond to people who have questions, and I'm happy to put myself out there for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim, again for your time and for sharing your story and your journey with us. And until next time, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a good one.